So I just watched The Loud House, and if Lincoln has grey hair before he's even reached his teens from the stress that his sisters cause him, does that mean he's going to die early as a result of it? I mean, I have no hair and grey facial hair, and I will be 31 by the time this video goes out, so, he's gonna be in a box before he reaches middle age, and you know it's true. Oh hi! Welcome to So I Just Watched, the show whose host, thankfully, only had one other sibling. Because I swear to God, if I had 9 others, I would end up in an early grave. Much like Lincoln. I'm not gonna stop ramming that point home, it's kind of obvious. Anyway, let's look at The Loud House, Nickelodeon's modern animated success story. I don't say that lightly either. For The Loud House to now be on a 6th, soon to be 7th season and have so many spin-offs, it truly is a miracle given Nick's track record with original animated programming over the last decade. Unless you're SpongeBob, something related to Avatar, or another pointless attempt to give the Fairly OddParents a crack again, a new TMNT series reborn every 3 to 4 years, or Paw Patrol or Nick Jr., a Nickelodeon animated show normally doesn't last more than 1 to 2 seasons tops. So for Chris Savino and the rest of the staff who've worked on the show, that is a massive success story. Yes, I know Savino was removed from the show due to sexual harassment allegations, but as he did create the show and it was based on his life experiences, I have to mention his name at least once. Either way, I can understand why it has been so popular. The core premise of a boy living with 10 wildly different sisters and letting all hell run loose allows for a variety of situational comedy and OTT shenanigans that can easily entertain people young and old. One worry, however, is how naturally that comes across. This is why I steered clear of it, because I doubted whether it could sustain itself when put under my gaze. That's why this series exists, as an excuse for me to ascertain its quality, and release the video over a year after I watched the episodes and wrote the majority of this script. I did so in order to give myself a reason to watch the Netflix film in time for my end-of-year best and worst animated films video, so yeah, you can understand why I left this one on the back burner when I really was focusing on videos a lot bigger. Let's find out whether Nickelodeon's most beloved set of children are worthy of mine and your attention. When broken down to its natural framework, The Loud House is a show akin to the type of cartoons I grew up with, where occasional elements of permanent in-show continuity are altered, but predominantly episodes are self-contained and aren't connected to a wider narrative as shenanigans unfold. This, thankfully, should remove a heavy amount of pressure from above the show's head, forcing its entertainment value to be based entirely on the strength of those characters, their interpersonal relationships, and potentially wide-spanning situations to do the heavy lifting compared to most of the shows I've reviewed on this series. That is a refreshing positive, but when it starts to struggle, I will notice. The exact order of the episodes was also in contention, as the show's standard Wikipedia page says one thing, whilst the UK Netflix and FanWiki says another. I will go off the latter, implying that both effectively are the exact same. Premiere segment Left in the Dark does a great job of establishing all 11 characters' traits and overall personality quirks, at least in surface value, and uses them all to come through for a combined problem. Who is watching the TV that night? Riveting! All while establishing the type of stoic mayhem that you would expect, not helped by the fact I have to use a wiki to remember all of their names. Who in their right mind as a parent decides that all of their children have to have the same first letter for their names? It's a problem that has permutations with all of them repeatedly being on screen at the same time, to where it's easy to lose track of. Said group showcase, though, does provide a link to the overall conflict through using the show that Lincoln misses to provide entertainment when the real show is out of his reach. And while the squabble for each character is suffocating, it still was fundamental to the segment working. It also alarmingly brought attention to the claustrophobic framing of shots, by having so many characters crammed into the visual plane, which, given the premise, along with the striking character designs to all of them and the flat comic-influenced backgrounds, made them pop and be more recognisable and memorable. It allows you all the visual panache necessary to where you can be satisfied even in its limitations. It's a solid first outing that set a decent standard, followed up with Get the Message, showing Laurie and Lincoln fighting, with repercussions that needed to be undone fast, as Lincoln's journey to remove an expletive-laden voice message is overwrought and convoluted, given the outcome leaves you dissatisfied, only for it to circle straight round again as ends. The humour fell flat and left me gasping for air as it retreads the same jokes ad nauseam. Not to mention, this is the first of 3 occasions in this selection where Laurie is the main centre of attention, a repeated plot thread that I hadn't noticed until I began writing this script around a year ago. Second episode offerings, Heavy Metal and Making the Case, straddles the line between funny and irksome, with the former peddling the whole "if someone picks on you, they like you" diatribe, which is absolutely abhorrent, to where it overshadows the theme of sibling interference and respecting personal space dealing with issues. It also shows these sisters do care for their brother, although doing so when his love life is on the line is a little cliche. The sight of the Sister-nado fourth wall breaks, the sisters' ideas getting back at the bully, and their excited screaming proved more than enough to get some laughter out of me though. I will also give it some credit for offering up something that was vital to continuity by sowing the seeds for Ronnie Yang's eventual debut, which was unexpected this early on in the show's run. The latter, though, uses a fundamental rule of media, and Lincoln going against it in the chance for one sniff at glory and clout amongst his successful siblings, but turns excessive in highlighting the lengths he goes to salvaging his familial reputation to where any sincerity is avoided in favour of cheap laughs at his own expense. I appreciate the strong impetus on teaching the younger audience about learning to respect what people don't want exposed to the world and privacy and all that, but the heavy-handed execution meant that it wasn't enjoyable at all to see unfold, especially when you could see this ending coming from a mile away. You also have to question how a portable camcorder had a battery to last being on all day without being charged. Bloody cartoon logic. At this point, I was frustrated, and honestly I hope you can hear that in my voice in this narration, so I was hoping for something out there to regain my trust, and thankfully the third episode gave me exactly what I wanted, albeit with one major caveat. Both segments relied on the same conflicting plot point but in different guises. Laurie as a vindictive controller of her siblings, one for personal gain and exchanging driving tips for favours, and another in keeping the house in one piece to allow their so far faceless parents to enjoy date night in peace. Seeing Lincoln and his sisters attempting to teach dumber than a fence post Lenny how to drive by using her own process of nicknames, memory retention and word association to imprint them in her head was fantastic. It was a nice arc for her that came out of left field, and really held the episode together when it came to balancing the seriousness and the comedic side of it, only for her sister to sabotage it. Of course, and while that revelation could have resulted in a tense rush to make it to the DMV before all shit hit the fan, it just cuts to it instead, removing this segment of any type of climactic urgency that it really needed. And well, Lenny failed, but at least gets recompense to end another episode on a joke. Yes, I would like to have something to finish this off pleasantly. It's disheartening when it had almost stuck the landing perfectly. No Guts, No Glory, though, as noted, sees the siblings rebel against Laurie's draconian rule, only for hell to break loose, of course. Apologies, and then attempting to clean it all up. It all means, well, until a golf club was used to knock Lincoln out, leaving the duo's plan in tatters as they know they're in trouble regardless of what they do. This episode's segments, then, are definitive of the plot structure that's attached to these very simple stories. Overarching conflict point, a solution to it is outlined, the arduous task to make it happen then comes through, it then hits a notable stumbling block, and a moral is formulated to justify all that we'd seen before a joke or action is exclaimed to reset that conflict point back to square one as we cut to the credits or to the next segment. It's dissatisfying, and with a breakneck pace that feels dangerously overwhelming when crammed full of characters literally fighting for screen time, it's hard to comprehend how most outside of younger kids with equally accelerating attention spans can really keep up. It led to the final tandem, the sweet spot and A Tale of Two Tables, understandably being under pressure, needing to mend the damaged bridge. However, its banal story choices caused it to forego any attempts at the sort. When the segments at hand focus on strategic road trip planning going awry, and the desire to sit at the adult table at a dinner party not being as exciting as planned, with both descending into abject chaos simply to maintain the status quo, you know there really isn't a lot for this show to really offer you anymore, when all it has done beforehand has caused irritation and occasional laughs aplenty to where you really don't know what else to say anymore. It's a show then that knows where its niche is, and is comfortable to stick with the sterile plot format to tell it, as glimpses of depth and variance are swallowed by forgettable and lackluster dialogue that does little to help. Yet at the same time, it's lively enough to maintain attention, with somewhat fun characters, and stories that with enough substance under the right circumstances can exceed low expectations. It's a show that is hard to quantify adequately because it does so much right and wrong whilst plateauing too. It somehow manages to go across 3 axes and completely befuddle the viewer, which is why I have to find a new way to define something that's so middle of the road that it hurts to view. So after all that, would I recommend The Loud House? As you could probably tell by what I've just said, I am absolutely flummoxed. I really don't know what to do, so let's break the scale. I declare this show ambiguous. In doing so, I just watched. I never thought I'd come across a show that would make me so conflicted that I'd have to reinvent the critical wheel to adequately summarize my feelings towards it. Yes, I did almost come to that conclusion with Star vs. the Forces of Evil, but it subtly convinced me it was worth venturing forward with on the strength of fulfilling potential and exceeding anticipatory expectations. The Loud House, however, was enjoyable in places until sledgehammers of frustration and indifference burst through the door. I have room to find pleasantries in the visuals, the characters showing more than just what their limited blanket tropes highlight when they're given the time to do so, and when the story hits just right, I can have a good time with them all combining in a crushing yet endearing hug. However, when the story does not click, its humour falls flat, and its outcome and the characters themselves are irritating due to those elements, what you have is a cartoon that straddles the lines so finely that even just being satisfied believing it's okay just isn't enough. I'm balancing on a precarious tightrope, and the Loud House finds great pleasure in wobbling the posts to see whether I fall into the safety net, maintain my position, or am able to run across triumphantly. The inconsistent quality of the Loud House is brought on by adherence to its bare-bones consistency. Now, this contradictory statement makes little sense, but it accurately describes the Loud family's escapades in a nutshell. Even for so early on in this show's run, it was deathly afraid of shaking the nest out of fear of possibly alienating that audience. And its potential for scope is definitely there, but due to the strictly regimented slice-of-life premise and the confines it creates, it reluctantly stays put. But that sense of overwhelming conformity was maintained even when it went for its feature-length offering. So even when it had the chance to expand things and have more fun with it, they didn't, proving without a shadow of a doubt that this show knows exactly what it's doing, and in spite of better judgment, is content with its lot. And the fact that it has kids and adults of all ages sticking around for so long to where its constant renewal is almost inevitable, it proves that it's a winning formula. Although I wouldn't say so, because the Netflix feature that I ended up watching this show for scored only 2 stars, and was in no man's land when it came to last year's best and worst animated films list. So honestly, it wasn't worth it in the end. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching, this is the CC Network, and I will see you all next time.